Today I want to show you how to make my favorite sourdough rolls. These are potato rosemary rolls. Now if you're someone who just wants the highlights, I'm going to give that to you right now so you can stop watching my ugly face and get into your kitchen and make some delicious sourdough rolls.
That's so good.
And then if you want to stick around to see exactly how it's done, you're welcome to. So here are the highlights for you. Step 1, you're going to mash up some potatoes with some butter and some fresh rosemary. Step 2, you're going to mix up your dough using an Active Sourdough Starter. Step 3, you're going to let it rise for a few hours until it doubles in size. Step 4 is during the rise process, you're going to do a couple of stretch and folds. Step 5 is to cover it, place it in the refrigerator overnight to cold ferment. And all of these actions occur on day 1. Now we're at day 2. Step 1, take your dough out of the refrigerator and let it come to room temperature. Step 2, roll out your dough into a log shape. Step 3, cut it into sections and form those sections into your rolls. Step 4 is the final rise. And finally, step 5 is to butter the top and bake them until they're golden brown. That's the general idea, and I'll put all the ingredients in the description below for you. Now, if you're still interested, allow me to walk you through the whole process. Now, I start by filling up a pot of water, and I get it over a high heat and bring it to a boil. Then I grab 5 small golden potatoes. I just give them a quick peel, and I cut them into small pieces, just like that. Then into the water they go, and boil them until they're soft. Then get out a stand mixer, and into that I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of butter, and then I'm going to pick apart about half of this rosemary stem, and then I'll just dice this up until it makes about a teaspoon and a half's worth. Then that gets added in. Then you're going to drain your potatoes. You're going to add those to the mixer, stick on that paddle attachment, and you're just going to spin that for a bit. And just let that go for a little bit because you're just basically making some mashed potatoes. That way they can easily blend right into the dough. Now I'm going to move this thing to a scale here just so everything is really easy to measure. Okay, I'm going to zero it out. Then I'm going to start by adding 225 grams of water, 12 grams of salt. Then I'm going to add 550 grams of white flour, and then 200 grams of whole wheat flour, which will be 750 grams total. And then finally, you're going to add 180 grams of Active Starter. Now, I'm going to assume you know how to make your own starter, but if you don't, totally fine. Just go watch my video on how to make your own sourdough starter, and I'll put that video in the description below for you. But for now, this is our final ingredient, 180 grams of starter. Now, everyone say thank you to the scale, and let's move back to the mixer. The dough hook attachment this time. And we're just going to spin that until it turns into a dough. If you don't have a mixer, you can totally just use a bowl in your hands. Both methods are totally fine. Just use what you got. Now, once it's well mixed, just go ahead and grab a little bowl. Drizzle just a little olive oil at the bottom. I'll mix it around here with my fingers. Kind of oil up my fingers as well. I'm going to take the dough out. I'll give you a little peek at this. This is what it looks like right now. You can see a few chunks of potato in there that didn't mash up perfectly. That's totally fine. I'm just going to form it into a little ball here. Place that into the bowl. Then I'm just going to cover it with a wet towel. And I'm going to place this somewhere warm, which for me is outside in the sunlight, actually. Wherever you end up letting it ferment, just make sure it's someplace warm. It's going to take a little while for it to ferment, so you have to be a little patient. And visually, you just want it to reach about double its size. Now, 2, maybe 3 times during this process, you're going to want to stretch and fold your dough. The process is very simple. Just wet your hand a little bit. Pull up on the side like this, give it a little stretch, and fold it over. Stretch and fold. Stretch and fold. Just do this about 6 or 7 times here. And towel back on, get it wet again if you need to, and set it aside. Now, my dough has been fermenting and rising for about 3 hours now. And this is what it looks like. It's almost doubled in size. Now, I've done 2 stretch and folds in that period of time. And now I'm just gonna cover it with a little bit of saran wrap. Just gently place it over the top here and place my wet towel back on. And now I'm gonna pop this into the refrigerator where it's gonna stay and rest and continue to cold ferment overnight. And that step, of course, brings us to the end of day 1. And day 2 is when you'll actually make your rolls. Now on day 2, you're simply going to take your dough out of the refrigerator and set it on the counter. You can check on to see how it's doing, but mostly it just needs to sit there and rest so it can come to room temperature. This could take up to 1 to 3 hours. It doesn't really matter. The dough is going to be fine. Once it does reach room temperature and you're ready to start making your rolls, go ahead and dust with a little bit of flour on your counter here and pour out your dough. And then what I like to do is just kind of roll this into like a log shape. And you want it to be fairly even all the way across here. Then just grab a bench scraper or just a knife and just cut these into roughly even pieces here. Each one is going to turn into a roll. And of course you can weigh them if you want to be exact. But if you're like me and you just don't care about being so precise, I just kind of eyeball it. And I'm just okay if some are a little larger or smaller than the rest. Now to shape these, I'm just going to put a little dusting of flour. I'll flatten out the dough just a little bit, and then I'll do this little cross stitch. First cross stitch, and then I'll roll it up. Then I place my hand on top, make a little hole here in the center, my palm, and then roll it until it's nice and tight and smooth. Then I place it into a baking tray lined with parchment paper. Now to prepare for baking, these will need to rise one additional time. I'm just going to pop a lid on these and set this again someplace warm where it can rise till everything is about doubled in size. All right, these have been rising for about an hour and a half now. Let's go ahead and take a look at it. All right, so these have roughly doubled in size. Keep in mind, yours might take just a little bit longer. It is pretty hot outside, so these rose quite well. Now I'm preheating my oven to 375, and I'm just going to brush the tops of these with some butter. This, of course, is completely optional, but let's be honest. Are you really going to skip the butter and regret it for the rest of your life? Of course you're not. So go ahead and put the butter on. You'll be thankful you did. And they need to bake at 375 for roughly 30 to 40 minutes. Now, this is what they should look like when they're done. Slightly golden brown on top. They should have that slight hollow sound when you tap on them. Now these do need to cool for a bit, but I want to show you what they look like on the inside. See if I can do this without burning myself. Look at that beauty. Should be pillowy soft here. And by the way, these smell amazing. Now I need to let these cool for about 10 to 15 minutes or so. Then I'm going to give them to the tiny taste testers and see how they are. But until I see you next, go cook something delicious like some homemade sourdough rolls for someone you love. Here you go, guys. Try those rolls.
That's so good. I labor on it. And it tastes like bread, except like it's a different shape. It's pretty good.